So I debated tonight whether to have you share first about the week, and I decided to give my talk first, and then we'll have the chance. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you noticed about what makes you clench and what makes you unclench. Um, so, thought about what to say tonight. I felt kind of drawn in two directions. In fact, so I think I'll start with the first direction, and we'll see if we get to the second. Um, I want to talk a little more about just external supports for spaciousness. Um, in a meditative tradition, we're really working with the inner factors really strongly. And last week I talked about mindfulness as the most powerful inner factor. But I think that it's worth the time to pay a little attention to external factors in your life if you want to be more spacious. Some of these are not in your control, but probably more control than you're often willing to admit about some of these factors. One of them I alluded to last week when I talked about going out on my deck every morning, and I often do it at night too, to be outside. And this time of year, it's usually dark when I go out first thing in the morning and dark at night. So there are a lot of stars. And I do this because there's a feeling to it. I feel a connectedness to something really vast, which is this earth and its place in the cosmos. And I can say that, and it's very abstract, but the actual experience is very concrete because I'm there. And I think throughout the ages, people who have done meditative practices have noted the value of the outdoors and the value of being surrounded by nature, by which is meant the non-human environment, the non-built environment, as they say today. That's become a popular phrase, the built environment, what humans have done to make the world the way they want it to be. That it can be really helpful to get out away from that in all the ways that cues us in some way to be unnatural, if I can say, to be artificial, to be human in that way that we're very conditioned, very socially conditioned. Something about being out in the open, whether it's the forest or the field or the beach, that something loosens up inside. And we're reminded of something of our original openness in that environment. And that's always an option, I think, when you find yourself in some way clenched, in whatever form, to step outside, to use that resource. It's why people do retreats in the woods, in quiet places. So I wanted to first mention that. You can also look at the sky. You can look at outside from indoors. Sometimes outdoors is pretty inhospitable here in New England. And so it kind of works the same to look out a window. You get the same spaciousness. And it reminds you of your sky-like mind when you look at the sky. The mind is really like a sky. And we get fixated on the clouds in it. We get fixated on our thoughts and feelings and sensations, kind of the content. We often lose the openness, the vast openness of it. And so these natural presences like the sky and the ocean are very helpful. So the next thing that I want to talk about is if you want to have more space in your life, literally be less busy. There's a kind of a pride that this culture has around being busy, about how little time you have. There's a mark of pride of that. And it's kind of insidious. And so emptying your schedule can be a really helpful thing to do. Give yourself a period of time with nothing to do. Literally nothing to do. And then almost like a child, feel into what you want to do. What would feel like pure joy to do? Most adults have forgotten how to do this. Children walk into any space and they immediately see like the potential for fun, right? We adults in our semi-shut down adult state, if we suddenly have some time on our hands, we may not know what to do with it. It might be more quiet than what children would do with it. That's fine. If it involves pouring a cup of tea and looking out the window, petting your animal, or drawing something. I don't know where this will take you, but I would encourage you to try this week, is to take a period of time when you don't do anything, at least in a productive sense. And you really check in, like, what does my body want to do? What does my heart want to do? What would bring a sense of joy? And, because we're not on this earth to just get it all done. It sometimes feels like that, like we're on this earth to get it all done. All the stuff we do by way of making a living is to allow us to live, really, to provide the conditions for us to live. It's not the be and end all of our life. And I know sometimes if your work really feels like service to you, there's a deep joy to it. And it may be what you most love doing. But even then, there may be a need to slow down. There may be a need to open up space in your workday. And those spaces don't have to be huge. They can be 30 seconds long, so that you're taking 30 seconds. I mean, you can do it very meditatively, just to breathe mindfully. I kind of like gazing, to tell you the truth. What I enjoy doing sometimes is looking. And if you're in your home or in your office, sometimes you've surrounded yourselves with things to look at, right? Things that have feeling to them. So to take a moment and to look at the people whose pictures are sitting on my desk is a wonderful thing. To look at the picture over my desk, which was painted by a friend. To look at my shrine. I have a shrine in my office, some of the images there. To look at the light coming in the window. I love the eastern window when light comes in the morning, especially. And watch the crabapple tree outside change through the seasons. Once in a while, there's this like surprise. I had all these cedar waxwings land on it one year, just for one day. It was like completely covered with cedar waxwings. And they were eating the remaining berries, or I guess crab apples. They're really small, so I think they're almost like berries, which for some reason the robins don't like very much. The robins completely clean out the tree in the front in the fall, but these other ones kind of endure. And so there's all these things that happen. So open up that space, whatever it is in your workday, whatever it is in your day, to not do anything. And you'll find a great deal more spaciousness in your mind and your heart, because you're willing to do that. And because you're willing to go against the stream of conditioning in this culture to fill every moment with something productive. We'll probably not do this in this class, but it's sometimes really helpful to meditate on death and imagine you're in the last moments of your life, and just look back on your life and see what really matters to you. What did you do that mattered? What really, at the end of it all, when you're going to lose everything you own and say goodbye to all the people, and where everything that you were known for is going to eventually be forgotten, unless you really tried to be famous. It's a really powerful exercise in clarifying that. But anyway, that's a little bit of a little tangent off our topic. So external support for spaciousness. The next one is also difficult in this culture, but it has to do with creating silence around yourself. And by that, I first think of the TV as a thing that fills it's not just sound, but it's ideas. It's stuff other people want us to know about, think about, and all that can be very stimulating. It isn't like I want you all to be ignorant, but I want you to be mindful of what you consume. And so that includes media, it includes like scrolling through social media, and it includes news. It includes being informed and how you're informed. You might just notice how much you're conditioned by what you hear on the news, how much your experience is sort of taken over by that. And I admit we're in extreme times right now. Things are changing very fast. And yet I find it pretty easy to stay on top of it with very little exposure, particularly to other people talking about it. Once in a while, that's helpful, but I have to be very judicious about it because I do feel like there's a lot of talk that doesn't leave you in a good place. How can I say that? I don't feel like I said that very clearly, but guard your heart. Your heart is really important. Your heart matters. And as the shells and the bombs are exploding around you, it's okay to sometimes shut it out. It's okay to create a space in which you can breathe, in which what's going to happen tomorrow, based on something you heard about today, is not dominating your consciousness. It's okay to do that. Again, I don't want you to be uninformed or unthoughtful about these things, but you might be surprised how little input you need to be informed and how much you might want to be in your heart with it. When I grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, people would say, pray for things, and what did they mean? I mean, in this tradition where we don't necessarily talk about some external God being that's in charge of everything, that's going to make it all right, there's some equivalent of that, of like holding something in your heart and sending goodwill. And that's important. So in your kind of guarding your heart, you're creating a space to feel goodwill and to also send your wishes, what you really want to see happen. I believe it's powerful. As the Dhammapada says, mind or the heart, you could translate the word either way. So let's translate the heart. The heart is the forerunner of all things. The heart is the forerunner of all things. It sets the direction when we pay attention to it. So in this class on spaciousness, I would like your heart to have the space to both know what it wants and to feel like it can send that energy out in a way that's not full of fear and demand and catastrophizing, but is like a light. I'm saying it, again, it's interesting. I was talking about external supports, but now I'm talking about internal supports. But in order for the heart to have the space to do that, sometimes you've got to say no. I don't have to take all that in, or I don't necessarily have to go to this event right now. It's actually stressing me out. I actually need to take some space for myself. It's okay. As I walk around, the world is increasing, the silence of the world is increasingly impinged upon. I don't just mean noise, that's certainly there. But, I watch people in the sauna at the gym, at the athletic club on their phones. They can't be not on their phones, they can't just sit there and sweat. And something in me says, well, that's their choice, but it's really kind of nice to not have that and to have this silence. Because my sense is that our hearts need that. Our hearts need silence. They don't speak very loudly. Our hearts don't speak very loudly. They're kind of quiet. They kind of speak at a whisper. And so if there's too much noise, we may not hear them. If there's too much input from other people and what other people think is important, we might not hear them. So it's completely appropriate to kind of place certain limits on that for ourselves. Doesn't mean dropping out, doesn't mean not being an activist. It might mean being an activist from a different place. I mean, imagine being an activist from joy, not fear. I'm not saying I can do it all the time, at least, but I have some sense of it. So that's what I'm suggesting. So as you go through your week, you might notice, where can I insert some space here? Where can I assert some silence here? I mean, that might be a whole nother class's topic, silence, because it's kind of saying the same thing, and yet there's a different feel to it. All right.